Today's Patreon dedication is for Jason Belk. Thank you, Jason. Heliod the Sun Crown versus Merrin. With no white mana at all, unfortunately have to mulligan that one. Alright, but make up for it with this hand, so we will keep there. And let's get rid of Scavenger Ground, should be really good. Yeah, we'll go Arid Mesa, get rid of that. Draw into an Aetherflux Reservoir, so if we can keep that Sol Ring, it should be a pretty commanding game for us. Get down the Esper Sentinel now in case our opponent ramps on turn 2. We'll still be able to get down the Heliod next turn thanks to the Sol Ring. Yep, there we are. A Golgari Signet draws us a card to the Esper Sentinel and gets us into more card draw in the form of Dusk Legion Duelist. Now we see a Minas Tirith, so we'll get the Scavenger Grounds into play first, and if our opponent wants to play around that, then so be it. Sol Ring, and play out the Heliod the Sun Crowned. Well, that deals with the Esper Sentinel. We see a Demon's Disciple from our opponent. Got one card from it at least. Alright, a Mentor of the Meek. So why don't we set up with an Aetherflux Reservoir here. And then maybe we'll be able to go for Dusk Legion Zealot and Mentor of the Meek next turn. But might just start piling plus counters on this, just for the sake of drawing a card with fewer amounts of mana here. We'll see what we draw into. Okay, Recruiter of the Guard for a Soul Sister might make sense. So yeah, let's go for the Duelist. And that will gain us a life to the Reservoir, which puts a plus counter on the Heliod. That's the only target that we've got at the moment. Then we can play ourselves a Mentor of the Meek instead, I suppose, so that we can maybe start putting mana into that next turn. So we gain a life, put a plus counter, or actually gain a couple of life from the Reservoir, which puts a plus counter with the Heliod onto the Duelist and draws us a card that only triggers once a turn, unfortunately. Do have an untapped mana there if we want it with the Core Haven, but yeah, we'll just play the Mistfell Plains intapped. I edited my previous Heliod the Sun Crown deck, and I think I used it for multiplayer, so there are some lands here that I wouldn't use, like Mistfell Plains I don't think really needs to be in here. I don't think Core Haven really needs to be either, so yeah, there are some edits that I need to make, I think. Way too many tap lands for my liking. Way too many non-basics actually, because we do have extra planar lands in this deck. There is Merrin of Clan Nil Toth, so they will get the Demon's Disciple back into their hand. And there you go, what did I just say? So that's pretty useless to us. We will play the Core Haven. Maybe Crested Sunmare for some horse tokens would be good. Then we can use that as sack fodder. So we gain a life to the Aetherflux Reservoir, which buffs the Dusk Legion Duelist again, which draws us a card. This is one of the best cards that you can have in Heliod nowadays. It's only just been released. A Demolition Field, getting into all the non-basics in the deck. So if we're doing nothing for 2 mana, we might as well start swinging in. We'll swing in first, because we're going to give the Legion Duelist lifelink, I think. This will likely be 6 commander damage for our opponent. And our opponent decides not to block, so we'll go for the lifelink onto the Duelist. So gaining life means another plus counter. We'll just throw it on the Mentor of the Meek. Make it so that that can start swinging in soon as well. And then in comes the Crested Sunmare. You can see where the Soul Sister shenanigans will lie. Just haven't had a chance to get into it yet, but that is an indestructible horse we will likely sacrifice to the black creature that's going to come in this turn. We're only a couple of life away from winning with this anyway, so our opponent needs to be dealing damage to us really. Either that or setting up a fast combo. Nope, that is Tergrid. You're not going to make us sacrifice anything in time, unfortunately. Alright, and there's a Mana Crypt just to help the chance along, so Demolition Field, play the Mana Crypt. That gains us a life plus counter on the Duelist. That draws us a card into Ajani's Welcome. So finally getting into the Soul Sister effects. Play Ajani's Welcome. Draws us more. Plus counter on Mentor of the Meek. And our opponent sees that we're at 51 life now, so we can put the 50 life into this and blow our opponent up. Would have just gone for Recruiter of the Guard into another Soul Sister effect. We are playing into a board wipe, but we have some indestructible creatures, so should be able to get something done on our opponent if it wasn't for the Aetherflux Reservoir. We'll play another one. Up against Kodama and Jalandra this time, and once again we have a turn 1 Sol Ring. The last game went well. Yeah, we're on the play, so I shouldn't keep this, but let's try it. Definitely shouldn't keep it in mono white, where we'll struggle with card draw. So it's a turn 1 Sol Ring into Lightning Greaves, and if we get into a land next turn I will play the Ranger of Eos and try and get into some decent turn 1 plays, or 1 mana creatures I should say. A Hideaway card for our opponent, he's going to need a lot of power for that. Okay, Mentor of the Meek is decent, so we'll play that out. And it can be Lightning Greaves on there, we'll swing in for 2 damage. The green player obviously not missing out on lands, and will not miss out on a 3rd by turn 3 either, thanks to Sakura Tribalkai. Alright, and I'll hammer its archive. This is why you do not keep a 1-lander. We will draw a card to the Mentor of the Meek by paying 1. And it'll have to be 1 into X on Secure the Wastes. Let's swing in first of all. Our opponent just chump blocks with the Steve and then sacrifices it in response so he doesn't take damage. But we'll force the issue. So it's just 1 into X on Secure the Wastes so that we can pay 1 into Mentor of the Meek's ability. And there we go, that gets us into the land we wanted, so not a total waste of a turn. Obviously would have liked to have got that off the top though. Seeing the first commander in Jalanra, Caller of Wirewood. Alright, well there's a Walking Ballista, so yeah, we're looking pretty good to be able to combo off with that quite quickly, so do we just attempt to do that now? Whilst our opponent doesn't have any removal held up. We'll put 2 into X. We're still going to need a couple of turns because we'll have to get the Heliod into play. Then we'll have to give this lifelink and then we can combo off. So yeah, we're just challenging our opponent to deal with this board now. Could see a Bane of Progress or something like that as our opponent taps down for a bunch of mana here. Getting down a Vorinclex. That actually is the perfect thing against us here. That means that we can't have plus counters put on our stuff. So we'll take the damage from the Vorinclex, get into a Plains. So let's go Ranger of Eos. We still have 30 plus life, so say yes to Ranger of Eos. And we can grab ourselves a Serra Ascendant and play that this turn, so it can block the Vorinclex. And then I'll hammer its archive with an Esper Sentinel. Is that good enough? Yeah, let's go for the Esper Sentinel. So now we just have to hope that there's no Beast Within, because it would be excellent to be able to block the Vorinclex. I doubt they'll offer up the trade though, so I'm not even going to bother swinging in here because we want to be comboing off really. A Vivian Reed now. Destroy an artifact, enchantment or creature with flying. They decide to just go for the emblem straight away because they've got the Vorinclex, so +2/+2 vigilance, trample and indestructible on their creatures. And straight into a Tarrasque. So we're about to take a whack for 20 damage here. Yeah, our opponent's got it all unfortunately. Able to fight our creature out of the way, so we go up to 40, but yeah, we're just going to go straight back down to 20. I don't suppose our life total matters here, now that the Serra Ascendant's gone down. So apparently the play was an Hour of Revelation before now. So let's get down the Heliod the Sun Crown so that we've got an unblockable or an indestructible thing to block with. And then we might as well play the Esper Sentinel because we're not going to be able to put plus counters on it, but we will be able to draw a card to the Mentor and then hopefully draw a card to Esper Sentinel as well. Hellish Norn is only -2/2, so it doesn't get around indestructible. So we just need to pray that we get into an exile effect for that Vorinclex now. Vivian looking at the top 4 cards, and we'll be able to -3 in order to blow something up next turn. Revealing to us a Kamal for an overrun effect, so is our opponent going to be able to cast that here? Yeah, that went absolutely perfectly for my opponent. I don't think he missed out on a single card he needed there. Alright, that is a Last March of the Ents. So drawing a card to that thanks to his commander. We will draw to the Esper Sentinel. So throwing out the Kamal, we see a Kozilek, a Durnan, and a Vorinclex Voice of Hunger as well. So it's +3/+3 and trample on all of the stuff. I'm not sure if we can survive here. It's a 15/15 and an 11/11. Can fight something. Going after Mentor of the Meek we were going to block with, but it's just trample damage, so 26 damage coming through. And we've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so they've got us exactly here. Yeah, so getting beaten up by the Vorinclex, but like I said, that was an absolutely perfect game for my opponent, so can't really complain about that. We'll try one more. Playing against Pramacon this time, and we've got lands and life gain effects there, so we'll keep. We should have time to get down Authority of the Consuls, so we'll just play out a tap land first of all. Should be able to get down the enchantment on turn 2. Okay, drawing into an Aganjo. Yeah, so get down another tap land, and we'll go for the enchantment like we said. That will have our opponent's creatures come into play tapped, and we'll gain a life for them. Okay, drawing into the Elesh Norn again, so yeah, I think we're fine going for the Recruiter of the Guard here. We don't have anything to trigger the Monastery Mentor with anyway. Why don't we go for the Walking Ballista combo again, seeing as how we couldn't do it last turn. Alright, just holding up blue mana, so we'll assume that this Walking Ballista is going to get countered. We can get down the Jeweled Lotus into our commander here, so maybe try and have them counter this instead. So we effectively get a free Heliod here. They are holding up priority. Let's go for Arid Mesa Cracked, and we'll force them to use this counter magic. So once again it's 2 into X on the Walking Ballista, and probably win next turn if they can't do anything about it. So that does come down, just pass through the turn. That is a Revitalise from our opponent, gain 3 and draw a card. Ironically, our opponent's gaining more life than we are. Alright, and our opponent has an Ossification for our Walking Ballista, so it's not likely that that will come back again. It'll enter as a 0/0, even if we manage to get rid of this thing. Could have the Elesh Norn in play, I suppose. It would come down as a 2/2 then. So that could be relevant. Alright, getting into a Dawn of Hope, which we might have to put more mana into than I'd like. We'll play the Aganjo, so I can then go for Monastery Mentor into the Dawn of Hope, and that will make a token. And that animates the Heliod as well, so we can swing in for 6 damage, 5 commander. But our opponent has more removal by the looks of it. A Light of Hope destroys an enchantment, so getting rid of this means of card draw in order to deanimate the Heliod as well. A Fountain of Renewal now for even more life gain, followed by a Rhystic Study, down to 4 cards in hand. We'll still be able to draw a card with the Minas Tirith at least. Have to be able to swing in with a couple of creatures, which we can easily do here. Extra Planar Lens, not doing too well for us this video. I think it's 24 basics we've got in the deck. Anyway, swing in with everything, and I'm not going to bother with lifelink on anything, I don't think. I suppose we could draw a card here, and then that will allow us to decide if we do lifelink or not. Just a land, so yeah, might as well. Monastery Mentor will gain us 2 life, and therefore can put a plus counter onto the Recruiter, and drop a land puts us a step closer to the Elesh Norn. Could always go for extra Planar Lens next turn, and then each of our lands would tap for 2. But we could lose a land for nothing if our opponent has more interaction here. It looks as though our opponent's quite interaction heavy. And there is a Keranos, can likely start to lightning bolt things out of the way. Alright, so there's a Rescos Explorer. So if we go 3 into the extra Planar Lens, then we've got 4 mana left up. They'll have drawn a card from the Rhystic Study. Our opponent doesn't control more lands than us, so this isn't all that useful anyway. Yeah, we'll just draw a card from the Minas Tirith here, I think. Draws us into an Alhamret's Archive, which probably isn't good enough for 1v1. So I think we risk giving our opponent a card draw with the extra Planar Lens. Didn't explain the combo previously, but I assume you all know what it is anyway. If you've got at least 2 counters on this and give it lifelink, you can remove the plus counter, leaving it at 1 toughness in order to deal a lifelink damage to our opponent. That will trigger the Heliod because you've gained life, and put a plus counter on the Walking Ballista, and it's rinse and repeat at that point. Our opponent has successfully lightning bolted the Monastery Mentor out of the way, which means he revealed to us a Chasm Skulker. And yeah, our opponent is just rammed full of interaction. That's what I was worried about. A Flame of Anor blows up the extra Planar Lens, triggers the Heliod the Suncrown by getting this into play. We'll just put it on the Recruiter again. So we did end up losing a land for nothing. There is a Marsh Flats, so maybe we just go for the Alhamret's Archive this turn. And that should make the Minas Tirith better, I think. Triggers Prowess on our tokens, so we've got a couple of 2/2s and a 3/3 we will swing in with, barely taking our opponent below his starting life total here. Fountain of Renewal gains our opponent a life. Our opponent draws a card to the Keranos by revealing a Buried Ruin. A Sphinx's Rev for our opponent knocks him up to 34 and 6 cards in hand. How many lands do you need for this thing? Yeah, it is 6 or more lands, so he will start making 5/5 dragons next turn. Unless we blow it up with an Ugin the Ineffable, which might actually be worth doing. So we'll go in for the attack first of all, just on the off chance that he blocks. Does mean that we could lose a token, but I don't think it matters. We're not worried about the prowess here. Does not block, so missed out on 2 points of damage there. Could be that Ugin goes down straight away to the Keranos Lightning Bolt. Our opponent draws a card again to the Rhystic Study. It would be good to dodge a few Lightning Bolts so that we can tick up Ugin again, ready for blowing up the Study, because we're not doing too well on ramp here, but we have to deal with this thing before it starts making dragons. If we'd not gone for the extra planar lens previously, we could have gone for the Elesh Norn by now and maybe had this back online, but it's all relative at this point. Seeing another land from the Keranos means our opponent draws again. Now controls more lands than us, making this thing more relevant. And that is a Sunscorched Regent, so doing a better job of the life gain at the moment, but we'll take this out of Lightning Bolt range, because that thing enters tapped and gains us a life. And then it's a Mystic Remora, obviously going to be better at card advantage than we are in a Jeskai deck. Alright, and there is a Plains for us, so drop the Plains, tick up the Ugin. Underneath the Ugin is another land. So do we just give our opponent's drawing plenty of cards as is, so we'll go for the Elesh Norn. That will put a plus counter on the Sunscorched Regent. We will not be able to do anything about that, crashing in towards Ugin unfortunately. But we are threatening commander damage at this point. So 7 points of commander damage, couple of 3/3s and a 6/6. And getting our opponent down to 12 in one massive swoop, so Elesh Norn doing some work for us here. If we can get into Ossification removal off the top, then we might still be able to see that combo. Gaining a life from the Fountain of Renewal again. Mystic Remora hasn't done anything yet. We've only got one card in hand, so deciding to give up on it. Revealing to us a combat research means that we can see a Lightning Bolt. That goes onto the token, so we assume that they're swinging at Ugin. 8 cards in hand, so our opponent has a board wipe of some kind, surely. Gaining a life from the Refuge. We know of 4 of the 7 cards in hand. This is probably the combat research is going to go onto the dragon. Although it has to deal damage to a player. So maybe Keranos going onto the Ugin and then this hitting us would have been the better play. Assuming they want to draw even more cards, that is. A Smothering Tithe, we're not likely going to have to worry about all that much in a white deck. And that is Thalia, Heretic Cathar. Does have First Strike, and we'll bring our lands in tapped, so yeah, we don't have haste, so not as worried about the creatures coming into play tapped. Oh, of course, it has a debuff of -2/-2, so it dies straight away. It does enter in order to get the debuff, so we do gain a life. And that means a plus counter on the token to take it away from Lightning Bolt range. Now we assume that we lose our Ugin, unless they want to hold back blockers. Don't think it is going to make all that much of a difference here. Yeah, they do hold back a blocker. Alright, well, there's a Lightning Greave, speaking of haste, so Smothering Tithe, let's see here, do we just pay for Smothering Tithe so that they can't interfere with us? I think that's fine. Plus on the Ugin, putting underneath that a Generous Gift we could, yeah, very much do with keeping. Oreskos will trigger the Rhystic Study, our opponent gains a life to the Sunscorched Regent, pay into the Study. First time our opponents had more lands than us here. So search up a basic, play the basic, and then we'll get straight through to attacking. Our opponent blocking the 7/7, so we've got 10, 14 and 18 damage in our opponent. Let's draw with the Minas Tirith. We'll draw 2 cards here. And yeah, probably not the best play actually if we're playing around Smothering Tithe, having Swords to Plowshares and the like, but I don't think they have it. So yeah, our opponent goes down to -3, a little bit of an error at the end there. I'm always paranoid about the client not showing us what cards we're going to draw. Yeah, just like that. So it turns out we had an Hour of Revelation on the way anyway, and an Aetherflux Reservoir, so yeah, resetting the board would have been good. It does mean that we wouldn't have kept the Walking Ballista, because obviously the Elesh Norn would have gone down. But yeah, getting through plenty of interaction there, which is difficult in a mono white deck, so missing out on the combo, but getting through in the red zone regardless. Big thank you to the patrons, as always. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.